Hello learners, I am Dr. Manish Kumar Bhardwaj from School of Engineering and Technology of IGNOU. As you know, we were discussing about defects in timber. There are 5 categories of defect in timber: defect due to conversion, defect due to fungi, defect due to insects, defects due to natural forces, and defects due to seasoning. And out of these 5 categories, in the last 2 lectures, I discussed with you the first 4, that is defects due to conversion, defects due to fungi, defects due to insects, and defects due to natural forces. The 5th category of these defects I'll discuss with you, that is defects due to seasoning. Along with that, I'll discuss with you decay of timber also in this lecture. So let us begin with defects due to seasoning. As you know that to protect timber from many defects and decay, we do the seasoning. And during this seasoning process also, there may be some defects in the timber. What are these defects? These are, first of all, bow. Second is case hardening. Third is check. Then fourth is collapse. Then fifth is cup. Then 6 is honeycombing defect. Then 7 is radial shakes. Then 8 is split. Then 9th is twist. Then 10th is warping. So these are the 10 defects which may occur in the timber during the seasoning process. Means if the improper seasoning is there, then these defects may occur in the timber. So out of these defects, let us begin with the first defect, that is bow. So from the name bow, you must be recalling the bow and arrow with which some of you must have played. Of course, this defect draws its name from that bow, because here the curvature of the timber is somewhat similar to the bow, means along the length of the member. So this defect is indicated by the curvature formed in the direction of length of the timber, that you can see in this figure, that along the longitudinal axis of the member there is a curvature. So that is called as the bow. Next defect is case hardening. Case hardening describes timber that has been dried too rapidly. Wood initially dries from the surface, shrinking the surface and putting the core under compression. When this surface is at a low moisture content, it will set and resist shrinkage. The core of the wood is still at a higher moisture content. This core will then begin to dry and shrink. However, any shrinkage is resisted by the already set surface. This leads to reversed stresses, compression stresses on the surface, and tension stresses in the core. This results in unrelieved stresses called case hardening. Case hardening wood may warp considerably and dangerously when the stress is released by soil. This defect usually occurs in timber which is placed at the bottom during seasoning. So this is the condition when this defect may occur in the timber. Now next defect is check. A check is a crack which separates fibers of wood. Means here what will happen? The fibers of wood will be separated from each other. But here it does not extend from one end to the other end. Next defect is collapse. Due to uneven shrinkage, wood sometimes flatten during drying. This is known as collapse. And in collapse, what happens basically that physical collapse of fiber cells due to uneven shrinkage occurs. Next defect is cup. The cup defect is, you can say, somewhat different from the bow defect. The difference between these defects is that in bow defect, what happens that curvature is formed along the length of the member, whereas in case of cup, the curvature is formed in transverse direction of the timber, and it is somewhat similar to the English letter U. So that is why we call it as cup. You can see this defect in the figure shown here, that curvature is in the transverse direction. Next defect is honeycombing. Honeycombing is due to the stresses developed during drying and various radial and circular cracks develop in the interior portion of the timber. Timber thus assumes honeycomb texture, and the defect so developed is known as honeycombing, and texture looks like a honeycomb. Next is radial shakes. These shakes usually occur when the tree is exposed to sun for seasoning after being felled down. They run for a short distance from bark towards the center and then follow direction of annual rings and ultimately run towards pith. So in this figure you can see the radial shakes. Another defect is twist. When a piece of timber has spirally distorted along its length, it is known as twist. Means here the fibers will be twisted in the form of a spiral along the length of the member. So here the fiber gets twisted. Then another defect is split. When a crack extends from one end to the other end, it is known as split. Next defect is warp. When a piece of timber has twisted out of shape, it is said to have warped. Now, after these defects, let us discuss about the qualities of a good timber. Means a timber which is good for construction work as well as for other works. Characteristics of a good timber are, first of all, if we discuss appearance, means a freshly cut surface of timber should exhibit hard and shining appearance. Means a good timber should show hard and shining appearance. Next property of a good timber is color. The color of timber should be perfectly dark. Light color usually indicate timber with low strength. So you can identify a timber of good strength and a timber of low strength from its color also. Means a timber of light color is of low strength generally, and if it is having a dark color means it is having good strength, means the good timber for any work, whether it is construction, whether it is making furniture. So color is a very important quality. So from looking the color of the timber, you can identify whether the timber is of low strength or of high strength. Now let us look at the defects. A good timber should be free from serious defects such as dead knots, flaws, shakes, etc. Many defects we discuss in our different lectures. So the timber which is said to be a good timber should be free from defects. Another property of a good timber is durability. A good timber should be durable. It should be capable of resisting the actions of fungi, insects, chemicals, physical agencies and mechanical agencies. If it is capable of resisting these, then we can say that the timber is durable. If the wood is exposed to the actions of acids and alkalis for a prolonged period, it is seriously damaged. Weak alkali and acid solutions usually do not affect wood to a considerable extent. If it is so, then timber is durable. Then fibers. Fibers also play very important role in identifying a good timber. So if a timber is having straight fibers, that timber is considered to be good timber. As you know that when we were discussing about the defects, we discussed one defect as twisted fibers. So those twisted fibers makes the wood unsuitable. So that is why a good timber must have straight fibers. Then another quality of good timber is fire resistance. As you know that timber is a bad conductor of heat. Heat conductivity of wood is low and it depends on various factors such as porosity, moisture content, surrounding temperature, orientation of fibers, bulk density, etc. So it is expected that a good timber should be fire resistant to a great extent. Then another quality of good timber is elasticity. And elasticity is the property by which timber returns to its original shape when load causing its deformation is removed. This property you must have read in another courses also, and it says that when a material which is under load and it is experiencing some deformation due to load, when you are removing the load, then it should come its original shape. So here the timber also must have this quality that when the load which is causing some deformation in the timber, when it is removed, then timber should come to its original shape. Then it is called as elastic, and a good timber must have this property. This property of timber would be essential when it is used for bows, carriage shaft, sports goods, etc. Because here in these devices or in these different equipments, the timber is under the deformation for certain time due to the load, and if it is not reaching to its original shape after removal of load, then the equipments or the devices will be permanently deformed and they will be of no use. So that way the timber should have this property of elasticity. Next is hardness. So a good timber should be hard enough. It means that it should offer resistance when it is being penetrated by another body. Chemicals present in hardwood and density of wood impart hardness to the timber. Next property is mechanical wear. A good timber should not deteriorate easily due to mechanical wear or abrasion. Means when there is a abrasive forces, then there should not be any deterioration in the timber. This property of timber would be essential for places where timber would be subject to traffic, that is wooden floors, pavements, etc. So there, because due to the motion of the traffic, there will be abrasive action, and if the timber is not of good quality, means if it is not capable of resisting this abrasion, then there will be a wear and tear to the timber, and ultimately there will be a failure of that surface. The timber should have enough resistance to the mechanical wear. Then shape. A good timber should be capable of retaining its shape during conversion or seasoning. You have seen during the defects in timber due to different reasons that there were defects during conversion and defects during seasoning. So here the good timber should be capable of retaining its shape. There should not be any deformation. There should not be any change in the shape during conversion of the timber and also during seasoning of the timber. It should not bow, warp or split. So these are some of the defects basically, and there should not be any such defect during conversion in the seasoning in the shape of the timber. Then next quality is smell. A good timber should have sweet smell. Why? Because an unpleasant smell indicates decayed timber. It is not that giving a good fragrance to the room, because it is linked with, the smell is linked with the health of the timber, and unpleasant smell means decayed timber. So that way a good timber should give sweet smell, not the unpleasant smell. Then another quality is strength. A good timber should be sufficiently strong for working as a structural member such as joist, beam, rafter, etc. Means it should be strong enough to take the loads safely. It should also possess enough strength in longitudinal direction as well as in transverse direction, because the strength of the timber depends upon the orientation of fibers, and along the fibers and across the fibers the strength is different. So a good piece of timber must have the strength, good strength in longitudinal direction as well as in the transverse direction. Then another quality of good timber is structure. That what is the structure of the wood? So the structure should be uniform. Means a good timber should have a uniform structure. Fiber should be firmly added, means they are firmly held. Medullary rays should be hard and compact. Annual rings should be regular, means there should not be any irregularity in the annual rings, and they should be closely located. So the structure should be compact structure. Then another property is toughness. A good timber should be tough, means it should be capable of offering resistance to shocks due to vibrations. This property of timber would be essential when it is to be used for tool handles, parts of motor cars and aeroplanes. Earlier, the timber was used for making some parts of motor cars and aeroplanes, but now this timber is replaced by another materials. But to take the shocks due to vibrations, the timber should be tough actually. Then another quality of good timber is impermeability to water. So a good timber should have low water permeability, which is measured by the quantity of water filtered through the unit surface area of the specimen of wood. Means you will take the specimen of a wood, and through the unit surface area, how much water is coming out, that quantity will be measuring the permeability of the wood, and permeability of wood should be low. Water permeability is greater along the fibers than in transverse direction or other direction, and it depends on initial moisture content, character of cut, type of wood, width of annual rings and age of wood. So these are the factors which governs the permeability of timber. Now, weathering effects. A good timber should be able to stand reasonably the weathering effects. When timber is exposed to weather, its color normally fades and slowly turns grey. A good timber should show the least disintegration of the surface under adverse weather conditions such as drying and wetting, then extreme heat, then extreme cold, etc. Then another quality of good timber is weight. Timber with heavy weight is considered to be sound and strong, and the timber of light weight are considered to be less strong. Then another quality is working condition. Timber should be easily workable. Any material is considered to be good which is easily workable. You can convert it, you can make different parts, you can cut it into any shape. So that is the working condition. It should not clog the teeth of saw and should be capable of being easily planed and made smooth. The main factors strength of timber are abnormalities of growth, faults in seasoning, invasion of insects, irregularities of grain, then moisture content, then presence of knots, shakes, etc. And finally, the way in which a timber piece is cut from the log. Now, let us move to the decay of timber. What is decay of timber? Timber is said to be decayed when it is so deteriorated that it loses its value as an engineering material. Means you cannot use this material any long for any engineering purpose, means as engineering material, then it is said to be deteriorated. Various defects in timber we discussed earlier, and these defects may cause the decay of the timber. When these defects are in excess, timber decays and such timber is not used for engineering purposes. What are the causes or situations which may favor the early decay of the timber? So let us look these various causes or situations which favor the early decay of timber. These are: number one, alternate dry and wet conditions, first of all. Second is bad storage or stacking of timber. Bad storage or stacking of timber means first of all, it is not properly ventilated, the environment is moist. So such type of conditions are considered as bad storage or stacking of timber. Then fungi which are responsible for developing diseases in timber, such as blue stain, brown rot, dry rot, hurt rot, sap stain, wet rot, white rot, etc. Then improper seasoning means if the timber is not seasoned properly, if the seasoning is not done properly, then certainly this unseasoned timber will be liable to attack by many fungi, insects and the natural forces also, and it will decay quickly. So proper seasoning of timber is a must for keeping the health of the timber good. Then insects such as beetles, marine borers, termites, etc. These also cause early decay. Then keeping timber in contact with damp wall, damp earth, etc. This may also be the reason for early decay of timber. Then shocks or impacts received during young age from natural forces such as fast blowing wind, etc. Then another reason may be use of timber without taking out sap wood from its structure. Any wood which is still consisting the sap wood and you are using it, then certainly it is going to decay early. Then using seasoned timber without applying suitably preservative on its surface. Here you look that only using the seasoned timber is not enough to ensure a long life of the timber. Even the seasoned timber may be attacked by insects and fungi. So here to preserve, to make it safe, we have to apply preservatives on the surface of the seasoned timber. Then another reason may be using unseasoned wood with the application of protective coat of paint or tar. One very important, you can say, defect is that if you are using unseasoned wood and if you are applying the protective coating of paint or tar, then it is certainly going to decay. So these protecting coatings should be applied only on the seasoned timber, not on the unseasoned timber. So here in this lecture we discussed about the defects due to seasoning. Then we discussed about that qualities or characteristics of a good timber which may be used for engineering purposes. And finally, we discussed what is decay of timber and what are the factors which causes early decay of timber. So I hope you must have enjoyed this lecture. We will discuss in our lecture another material and defects in another materials. So thank you.